The Children's Museum of the Lowcountry offers unlimited learning adventures for children here in the Lowcountry. Today, I talk one-on-one with the executive director of the museum, Karen Coltran, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Karen Coltran, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, I appreciate it greatly. You know, you are the executive director of the Children's Museum of the Lowcountry, which is a staple here in this city and beyond. Tell me, what's new, what's now with the Children's Museum of the Lowcountry?
Well, what's new and now is we have big plans. So we are in a fundraising campaign, and our goal is to maximize the space we're in. We are in a historic downtown building, so we have the space we have. I was told I can't go up and I can't go out. And so we are going to be, you know, we inspire kids to be creative, so we're going to be creative and figure out how to, it's already a great experience. I have operated 2 other children's museums in my career, and this one, the reviews are the highest. It's the smallest by far. It's 1/10 of the size of the one I was in before, but it's beloved. I mean, you can feel it. Last Saturday, we broke our record and had the most people ever in the museum. And people were delighted and happy to be there. So we want to build on that and make it an even more exciting and fun and educational experience for area families and people who come visit us.
Yes, indeed. I walk by it every day. But let me ask you, where are you currently right now with that fundraising?
Well, we're about 1/3 of the way there. So that gives us some momentum. And we're getting going. We're going to do it quickly and get it done. The museum's had some fits and starts, and COVID got in the way and messed everything up. And so we really have kind of scaled back from those original plans that were out there probably circa 2015, 2016, because we've got different plans now. So what we're going to do is just maximize the space we're in, but we're not going to be constrained by the space we're in. So one of the...
I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, no worries, Karen. I was thinking, I don't even know if this is realistic, but can you all bring over some of those plans from 2015 and 2016 to this new plan?
No, not easily. I mean, one of the problems were that, it's the building is just tough. Yeah. Trying to do something in a downtown building that's 25 feet wide and a city block long, it just gives you challenges. What people may not know is there's actually Dominion Power has an easement running down the side of the building, so we can't even easily build out, because there is some space. So what we're going to do is activate that outside area so that it becomes a really fun downtown urban outdoor environment. It's screaming for that. So that's kind of the direction we're going. We'll have the same amount under roof, but we'll have a lot more going on. And our water exhibit got moved out of the building, which I think was smart. Yes. I know it was upsetting to people because water exhibits are everything. They come in right behind a grocery store in a children's museum as important. But that building was not made for water inside. It's just, you got to have the right drainage. You got to have the right materials. An antique building doesn't give you that. So we're going to take water outside, and we have big plans for that to be like the most fun place in Charleston. So that piece is there. But where our board is they want this maximized, but then they want to have impact throughout the Lowcountry. Our name is Children's Museum of the Lowcountry for a reason. We're not just the Children's Museum of Charleston. They're leaning into what that means. And so we are looking at potentially putting a satellite location all the way at the other end of the Lowcountry in a town called St. George. Sure. There's Rosenwald School. I don't know if you're familiar with those. Okay, that was an African-American school in the 1910s and 20s when it was built, served the community beautifully until about the 1950s, and it had fallen into complete disrepair. The town acquired it and really had a passion and a vision back in about 2015 of turning that building into or remodeling it so it could tell the story of that building, which is an important story to tell. And but they didn't quite know what they were going to do with it. So when I was the CEO at Adventure, I was very interested in doing an adaptive reuse as a children's museum. And so as I've moved, Adventure's priorities have changed, but the Children's Museum of Lowcountry has been very enthusiastic, even before I got here, about the possibility. So I'm very excited to be reunited with that project idea. And we are attempting to, as part of our fundraising, to help us outfit exhibits there. We're doing a lot of offsite. A lot of people don't know all that we do in the schools and the communities around. We're in Colleton County, Berkeley County. We're out there. And so this gives us an outpost from which to do more of that and give children that don't make it regularly downtown to Charleston because of resources or of all kinds, that this is a place for them. And so if that model works, we're going to look at that throughout the Lowcountry. So every, maybe different locations works for us. We're the only children's museum currently in South Carolina that's not part of a multi-system structure. So we want to catch up.
Absolutely. And Karen, I know that you all want to basically, do more with the space that you have, which is very limited, obviously. But how do you tell your story with that expansion?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry about the wind outside here, but now that you are working, to basically look towards the future with the Children's Museum of the Lowcountry, how do you exactly tell your story?
Oh, how do we tell our story? If we're going to have a workforce ready populace in this area, and people want to come here, clearly, and manufacturing wants to be here, and that, advanced manufacturing requires a career-ready workforce. And we have the humans, but we don't always have them career-ready, and that's what we're hearing. And to make that happen, we have to back up. I mean, we need high school programs, we need middle school programs, but your best investment and human capital is at the beginning of the life cycle. Because I always put it this way, Quentin, if every child entered kindergarten ready to learn and excited about learning, we would have a different economy. We would have different quality of life for our individuals. It would be impactful beyond belief if every child could start kindergarten ready to learn at kindergarten level and excited, had that passion for self-driven learning. And so that's what children's museums are really all about. Children experience when they're itty-bitty what it's like to discover and learn when they're driving their learning. And so our hope is that joy gets inoculated at the Children's Museum and carries them through that joy of discovery, because we're all born with it. We innately want to discover and learn, and life and experiences can sometimes pull that out of us. And so we want to touch every child in the Lowcountry to ensure that they have experienced multiple times the joy of learning. So that's what we're all about.
So you've been the executive director now for a couple of months. So what do you want to explore and learn with this particular organization?
That's a great question. This organization is fascinating to me, like I said, because it's been around for 20 years, or open for 20 years. They were trying, like many children's museums, there was a whole lot of work a decade prior to that to try to get it open. And volunteers did it. Volunteers built it, which I think is why one of the reasons I love children's museums, because they all start with some wonderful person who wants their community have this resource for children. I mean, what could be better than that, right? So what I want to understand is how can this institution really fit in with on multiple levels throughout the community and weave ourselves in. I mean, weirdly, we connect in strange ways. Like, for example, economic development. You know, when somebody sees a thriving children's museum, when they're just thinking, "Gosh, I might want to put my business here," it's a signal to someone from outside that the community cares about education and cares about children. I mean, I think it's an important message. Economic development people usually really like children's museums for that reason, right? I think helping children, like I said, have that drive to learn and moving them from sort of career curious, right, to career ready, and having a partner. We can't do it all the way.
Yeah.
We're going to have partners that take it after us, but we are looking at programs that then brings middle and high school kids back in for volunteer experiences, for learning experiences. We're a great lab for teaching about nonprofits, how they operate, for all kinds of things. So we're looking at the whole life cycle, because then we get you as a parent, and then we get you again as a grandparent. And so the Children's Museum, you know, while it's all about children, it isn't just about children.
Yes, ma'am. So, Karen, let me ask you, and I'm looking around, and I'm sitting here at the Charleston Digital Corridor here in downtown Charleston, which is known for, their big community development, economic development community. So what public-private partnerships do you want to have to help grow the economy in and around the Children's Museum?
We know I love tech. I got asked in an interview not too long ago about what I thought about AI, and I'm a huge fan. I'm old enough, this is sad to say, that I remember when the calculator came out, and I was in elementary school. My dad took me to the store to see a calculator. It was $99. And I said, "How does it do that?" And my dad's like, "I don't know. I'm a writer. I don't know how it does." But so I can't tell you how AI works, but I can tell you I use it, and I see it like a calculator. I think it's a tool. I'm sure that there are scary parts to it, but I really think we need to embrace the wonderful parts of it and harness these technology tools. So helping the weird way to help children, though, understand technology and be able to embrace it later is actually not giving it to them when they're teeny tiny. Mm. What they need when they're tiny, and the way the brain works, they'll get to that. That will come. But pushing that down the age range is actually, we have seen in studies, not developmentally useful. Because if you push it too soon before the child's ready to learn that way, before their brain is wired to learn through technology, they'll push it back. And we see that with school in general. If you try to take that curriculum and shove it down younger before they're developmentally ready, they'll not like school. So when children are young, they learn through their bodies, through doing, through experiencing. They can't just sit in a seat. I don't know about you. I raised a son. He couldn't sit in a seat when he was 3, 4, 5, 6, probably even a little older. We use our bodies to learn when we are young. So they talk about 8 years old is a good line of demarcation. Up until then, you're learning to read. And then after that, you read to learn. And the brain makes a wiring difference. So in the early years, the tool that they use is not technology, it's play. Play is how children work through and synthesize all the things that they take in. Their brains have more cells and are more active when they're born and those first 5 years of life than they ever will later. The pruning, they call it, starts at 5. They're wired for anything. A child born, in the tundra versus a child born at the equator. They have to be able to take in whatever their environment is and wire up. It's why little kids can learn any language, and you get to my age, you can barely speak your own. So the brain works like that. And so we have to understand that and build our exhibits to encourage and see if we do it right, they just look like fun. And that's one of the challenges children's museums have is adults will say, well, it's just a place to go play. Well, but play is the work of childhood. That's how children learn. So that's what we do. And honestly, I think it's how all people learn best.
And so, Karen, what are you pruning right now to have those exhibits ready for those types of kids?
Well, I love exhibits that tie in with the environment and community that people live in.
Oh yeah.
because it lets then parents and caregivers extend what happens in the museum. And another thing I should have mentioned to you when you said, what am I looking at? Our job is to educate parents and caregivers as much, because these little people don't come with owner's manuals. And unless you took a class in early childhood education and you remember it from college, we don't come equipped to know these things. So I think we have a real opportunity in children's museums to teach parents and caregivers things they can do to help extend the learning, because every parent and caregiver wants to help the child they're with. We have no doubt about that. Doesn't matter where you come from, what you do, everybody loves their children. So if we can give them tools, for example, I know one of the little plans we have is to have in the toddler area, maybe like kids love when they're early walking, to make it over a little bridge.
Yep.
Doesn't seem like much to us. It doesn't seem like much once you're about 2. But when you're 18 months old and you're figuring that's huge. And so if that bridge just happens intentionally to look like the Ravenel Bridge, then dad or mom in the car can say when they're going over it, remember when you walk, and make that connection for a child. Those are, one of the things I say to parents is just, as you can tell, I'm a talker. Talk to your child. Talk all day long. In the grocery store, look at that. What color is that? That's blue. That's pink. And we see that as, it kind of breaks my heart. Like when we look at families based on socioeconomic level, how many words a child has heard before they start kindergarten in a middle or upper income household versus lower income. And talking's free. It doesn't have to be resource based. It's information based. And so the more we can explain that this is of value. No, they don't. And it's not even just socioeconomic. I had a lawyer on a tour of the museum who had young twins say to me, my wife wants me to read to them every night, but I don't think they understand what I'm saying. They were like 8 months old. And I said, okay, they don't teach you this in law school, but just get your Wall Street Journal and read it to them, because they need to hear language. That's what they need. They don't read a book that's going to make your head explode. Read what you want, because right now that they need to hear you talking. So those are some of the things I think we can convey to families and reinforce what they're doing already to even help them, because they're the best teachers these children are ever going to have.
Yes. So Karen, let me ask you. So then, okay, what is the average, attendee, I should say, for lack of a better word, what are the attendees' needs and wants when it comes to the Children's Museum in the Lowcountry?
Well, again, we have this bifurcated audience, right? We have the young child and we have the adult. Yeah. And we see, we see all ages of children. We serve on the museum floor probably up to about age 10. Like I said, age 8 is when that educational transition starts to happen. So by, right around the same time as organized sports, sometimes, I kind of tie it in there. They get into Little League, they get into other stuff, and then, they're on. But so we have the child. And what we do for them is to make sure that our exhibits have a lot of pedagogy underneath how they're designed. So take the grocery store I mentioned before. It looks like they're just gathering the stuff. Well, you'll watch at a certain age, they want to sort everything. And they'll get very upset if the apple falls into the orange container, when they want it sorted, right?
Right.
Sorting is a precursor to counting. You can't count until you sort.
Right.
So, but we forget these things because we don't remember how we learned at this age. Okay, so those of us who do design it do know that, and so we do it so that. But and then the child gets a little bit older. Now they're getting interested in the cash register. I was talking to a mom on the floor Saturday in the museum who said, "I know he finally just kind of noticed the cash registers, and now he's obsessed with them." And that's developmentally right where he should be. So I think that, children know, if we've designed the exhibits right, kids know what to do. No instructions required. It's the adults that we could probably do a better job, and we're going to try to talk to more about what's going on developmentally for their children, about the milestones, and how, the Children's Museum can be a support in that.
What are the milestones when it comes to the Children's Museum of the Lowcountry?
the milestones. Well, like I said before, we've been on a pretty, I would say, usual path for a children's museum. We had a wonderful volunteer in the community who just wouldn't let go, and she said, and a couple of her relatives are still on the board, which is very exciting. The next generation of this family, and they, they knew Charleston needed this, and they went after it and got it there, and then it's thriving. So we're at our, I guess I'd call it the teen years, in development, that midpoint, where now it's like we've demonstrated impact. We've become a regular part of the cultural scene for the Charleston area. Now where can we go? So our goal, and when I was hired, they asked me what my goal was. And I was actually a Charlestonian before I became at the Children's Museum. I'd ran the Children's Museum of Richmond in Virginia for 10 years. Then I came down and ran Adventure in Columbia.
Oh, yes.
And my husband and I fell in love with Charleston, and our son was in college here, and we were like, well, why are we paying for him to live in Charleston? Why don't we do it? So we knew this was going to be our forever home, and we bought a place, thank goodness, before 2017 and or whenever everything went crazy. But so I used to sit at the Rue de Jean across from the Children's Museum and think, oh, I wish I had that Children's Museum. I would love to be there. And then the fates happened. And so I am the most blessed soul in the world because I walk about 1,000 steps, my iPhone says, to work. And it's wonderful. So, but when they asked me what my goal was, I want a world-class children's museum to match this world-class city.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. And what else do you want to help, what else, when it comes to that, what else do you want to match as far as that to make certain that it happens?
Well, like I mentioned, it's getting people involved. I want it to reflect the city.
Yes.
And I think we can do that so easily. And I want to make sure right now people have on average about a 2.5 hour experience at the museum, which is great. And, we have to live and die by nap time sometimes. So, you can't go but so long with our audience. But I think we can extend that. And I think we can have more, like I said, that engages adults as well in the play, because facilitated play, the fancy words we use in education for, help getting down on the floor and playing with your child, that studies show is what really makes a difference with a child. They actually run, double-blind control studies on these things where children are, they can do some pre and post test work and analyze, if you just put implements out for children to interact with versus children interacting with a caring adult as well. And we see that is the best case scenario. So since we're never going to be able to afford a educator for every single child that comes through the museum, we want to help parents understand how that is. But we also always leave space for, sometimes you just come to the Children's Museum because you need a break. We know that too. So serving everyone.
And you talked earlier about the adults in this particular interview, Karen. I know that Bodega and Share House is right across the street from each other. So how do you want to partner with them to make some adult exhibits possible?
Yeah, well, they've been very kind to the museum, so I appreciate them very much. They're very nice neighbors. So and I think we coexist well. And like I said, I live 1,000 feet away, so I know when they get rocking happily, it's not usually the times that we're open. And we're orienting, like I said, our new exhibits are going to be outside, which is on the Aiken building side of the house of our facility. So I think we're I think it's a nice compliment to the neighborhood, and they've been very good. I always see our visitors with their stickers on over there having lunch. So I think it's nice. And I actually am getting ready to sign a really long lease with the city on that building, so we are going to be there for a long time.
Long time. And how are you planning and funding annual exhibit and program enhancements that increase the visitor engagement and actually promote repeat visitation?
Yeah, well, that is through membership. And, COVID hurt us in that regard because why buy a membership when you don't even know if the museum's when it's going to open, what it's going to do? So, and that's not just us. In fact, right before this call, I was on with a bunch of museum directors from around the country who are still trying to claw back from that. So, we're all in that space. But what we plan to do, and thank you for asking this, is we're really going to build out a robust schedule of fun events that happen, and we're going to do a lot of them for members. So you're going to need a membership to the museum in order to really participate in the life of the museum. We want everyone local in the, within a half-hour drive or 45-minute drive of this museum to have a family membership. We know we're the best, lowest cost provider of educational fun. And, a lot of times families go, oh, well, we've been there once. We don't need to go back. Children do really well when they can repeat the experience, and they have a different experience every time. I always give the example. If you going to read a book to a child, they want to hear the same book every night. It makes your head explode because we adults crave variety, right? And but children don't. The way the brain is wiring up, it wants to repeat. It's why they ask you the same stuff all the time. And if you ask that child, you come home and go, hey, I bought a new book, so we don't have to read Pokey Little Puppy for the 15th time. They will say, no, I want Pokey Little Puppy. And same thing with the Children's Museum. I will have adults say to me, why don't you change these exhibits more often? And I'm like, what we used to do in my previous museums is actually we would change the museum. I used to talk about the 5 feet up. From 5 feet up, we make it look different. You do seasonal banners. You do all kinds of things like that. But you down low where the kids are experiencing it because they're building on their last visit. So, yeah, like I said, it's tough when you have really two different visitors.
Oh, absolutely. And so Karen, do you actually develop a multi-year schedule of new exhibit creation informed by visitor data and, say, feedback?
Yeah. Well, it's, I like to do classic exhibits, but change out the events and how we use and move in the exhibit. So I'll give you an example. This is another little foreshadowing. But we are going to try to build an indoor-outdoor stage. And so the way we're going to activate that is to invite performers and storytellers and people from all over the Low Country to have a place to perform. Because we don't have a big enough staff, honestly, to have all this creativity. We're creative.
Right.
I would say some of the most creative people in town. But there's so much rich, diverse resource out in the community. And so we want to be able to showcase them because a lot of nonprofits or smaller groups or authors of local books, they can't build audience like we can. I mean, we're running 120, 130,000 people a year through this building. We get more going. We'll be doing more than that. So, but we bring audience. And so our job is going to be to find community partnerships that let people experience things in the community that they might not get to anyway and help some of our other nonprofit partners who want to showcase all the fabulous work they're doing.
And so how is the museum actually gathering and analyzing, say, teacher feedback and educational trends to inform those program offerings?
Well, we stay very close. In fact, a little bit later today, I've got a meeting with a science teacher that we're going to do the walkthrough of the exhibits and have a conversation. So we do a lot of it one-on-one like that. We always ask for teacher evaluation. We have, like, for example, we have an event we do for families with children with special needs that we open the museum for them, keep the attendance low because a children's museum can be a very tough place if there's a lot popping and your child struggles with that. So we have that a couple times a month, the second and fourth Sunday mornings from 10 to noon. It's just for families. So we always survey those families and understand what could we be doing different? Was the activity that we did helpful? So we're very open to feedback, and people aren't shy about giving it to us, which is great. Right. But yeah, we try to incorporate everything that we can and that fits with our educational philosophy.
So in the past, say, 6 months, Ms. Karen, how have you all tracked geographic and demographic reach and actually identified those towns and cities with low visitation numbers per capita?
Yeah, we keep a really close eye on that. Everybody has to give us their zip code. I guess if somebody said they wouldn't, we wouldn't. But the vast majority of people are happy to give us their zip code, and we do that at admission. So while I don't have a whole lot of demographic data, sometimes that grant funders really want me to have, I can't tell them, gender breakdown of my attendance, for example. But I can tell them where they're from with that zip code data. And so we do look at that very closely, and we'll be analyzing that when we think about where we want to go with multiple locations.
And what are those other multiple locations that are ideal right now?
Well, we're still in the exploratory phase. Our board is in strategic planning right now. So they're putting the final touches on a plan that they want to put before the board later this summer. So where we really are at this point, Quentin, is saying we know we need to grow. So the board is unified in that. Where we go is going to be dependent on so many factors. We're not even going to identify. We're going to get out in the community, talk, and see where it makes sense. We do know about St. George, though.
Right.
We're excited about that one.
Oh, absolutely. And Karen, let me ask you this. What is your approach, obviously, to assessing presence to support a deeper involvement in neighborhood environments?
Well, again, our staff really, during COVID, like most museums, it was tough. And, so we are in a rebuilding phase with our staff, which means we're in a rebuilding phase with some of our partnerships. And then they have a new CEO on top of that. So I gotta, we're just getting out in the community. I have 2 deputy directors, Mike Lyle, who I think you know. That's right. And we're very fortunate to have Mike because he knows a lot of people. It's very helpful to someone like me who's been here but not emaciated yet. So I'm trying to get that figured out. And I have Jennifer Sanders, who's our deputy director for education, and she's on steroids, getting herself out and talking in the community. In fact, I think she's out in Colleton County as we're talking right now. But to meet and to talk and to have the conversations that build the relationships and the trust, because if you're going to go out in the community, you got to show that why you're going and that you're a trustworthy partner. So that's the phase we're in, and we think by doing that dating, we'll figure out who to marry.
Absolutely. and so what do you think the conversation will be about the Children's Museum of the Lowcountry 5 to 10 years from now?
I love that question. My hope is that it'll be about the community will be very proud of their museum, that when people come to visit Charleston, they I came to Charleston from Virginia with a 2-year-old and there wasn't anything for him to do back then. He's in his late 20s now, so it was a while ago, before the museum was open. I want to be, now we have the aquarium, we have the International African American Museum. I mean, there's stuff coming. And I want families with young children to say, Charleston is beautiful and there's a lot to do with the kids. And the Children's Museum of the Lowcountry is a big part of that. So I'd like visitors to see it that way. And, I always say Children's Museum is great for another head in a bed when it's raining, or they won't leave town because they can go to the Children's Museum and stay because it's supposed to be 82 and sunny the next day after. So we play a part in that piece, in the tourism piece. We play a part in the educational world, as I talked about earlier. We play a part in the tech world and business workforce development. So that's one of the things I love about children's museums is we cut across so many interesting sectors. So I want all of them and locals to say our children's museum is integrated throughout the community, it's thriving, and it really gives our kids a great start.
Absolutely. What is the state of children's museums?
What is the state of children's museums?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, there are about 300 of them. across the country. They tend to start just like this one with usually a female who sees one in another town and says, "Daggone it, my town needs it." And you get somebody that's a dog with a bone and persistent, and he or she will just go after it and get it done. And then it can take, I've seen it take 5 years, 10 years. I know of one that hadn't started yet, and they've been at it for 20 years. I know. So it can take a while to get all the pieces together. But once they do that, we're all private nonprofits. But I'm a big fan of opening multiple locations because you spread your overhead over more visits, right? I mean, just from a business perspective, it makes sense. I'd rather see stronger financially sound, multi-location children's museums. Now, I'm very proud to say that my adoptive state of South Carolina is doing that. Right now, we are the only children's museum that isn't multi-location. And so we have just formed with Adventure and the Children's Museum of the Upstate and the Main Street Children's Museum in Rock Hill, the South Carolina Alliance of Children's Museums. And we got Governor McMaster to declare Week of the Young Child in April as South Carolina Children's Museum Week. So we're going to build on that and really help our state understand and that it has some amazing children's museum assets for a state our size. And we want to make them all stronger and even more impactful than they are already, and working with groups like First Steps and community partners like that to really make it so, I mean, ultimately, we'd like to see the educational outcomes improve. We don't want to fight it out with Mississippi and Louisiana, or, to be last among state educational outcomes. We want to move that up, and we believe children's museums are a great piece of that puzzle to doing that.
Karen Coltran with the Children's Museum of the Lowcountry. Thank you for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you. This was fun. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.